Hi everyone, good morning. I am Arlon M. Evangelio, BS Ed Science, first year. And today I will be discussing or reporting about all the topics of PED 1 or the child, adolescent, learner, and learn. So our first topic of the child, adolescent, learner, and learn is about the human development, meaning, concepts, and approach. So what is human development? Human development is the pattern of movement or change that begins at conception and continues through lifespan. So the human development has three domains. The first domain is the physical domain. So the physical domain is the changes in children's fine and gross motor skills as well as their increasing coordination, particularly in terms of playing sports. The physical development also involves brain development, which not only enables childhood motor coordination but also greater coordination between emotions and planning in adulthood, as our brains are not done developing in infancy or childhood. Physical development also includes puberty, sexual health, fertility, menopause, changes in our senses in primary versus secondary aging. So that is the physical or the first domain, which is the physical development. Second is the cognitive domain or the cognitive development. So the cognitive development includes mental processes, thinking, learning, and understanding, and it doesn't stop in childhood. Adolescents develop the ability to think logically about the abstract world. So during this development, the moral reasoning develops further, as thus practical intelligence wisdom may develop with experience over time. Memory abilities and different forms of intelligence tend to change with age. Brain development and the brain's ability to change and compensate for losses is significant to cognitive functions across the lifespan too. So that is the second domain, which is the cognitive development. And now let us proceed to the last domain. So the psychosocial development. So development in this domain involves what's going on in both psychologically and socially. So this domain focus is on infants and caregivers, as temperament and attachment are significant. As the social world expands and the child grows psychologically, different types of play and interactions with other children and teachers become important. Psychosocial development involves emotions, personality, self-esteem, and relationships. Peers become more important for adolescents who are exploring new roles and forming their own identities. So that are the three domains of human development: the physical domain, cognitive domain, and the psychosocial domain. And now let us proceed to the major principles of human development. So the first principle is development is relatively orderly. Second is wide pattern of development is likely similar. The outcomes of developmental process and rate of development are likely to vary among individuals. Third is development takes place gradually. And fourth, development as a process is complex because it is the product of biological, cognitive, and socio-emotional processes. So that are the major principles of human development. And now let's just proceed to the approaches of human development. So the human development has two approaches. The first one is the traditional approach. So in traditional approach, it shows extensive change from birth to adolescence, little or no change in adulthood, and decline in the old age. While the lifespan approach is adulthood development change takes place as it does during childhood. So that are the two approaches. And in lifespan approach, there are five characteristics. So the first characteristic is development is lifelong. So it does not end in adulthood. No development stage dominates development. So the second is development is multidimensional. Development consists of biological, cognitive, and socio-emotional dimensions. Third is development is plastic. Development is stable throughout the lifespan. Fourth is development is contextual. The individuals are changing beings in a changing world. And lastly, development involves growth, maintenance, and regulation. So the growth, maintenance, and regulation are the three goals of human development. So the goals of individual vary among developmental stage. For instance, as individuals, each middle and late adulthood concerned with growth gets into backstage, while maintenance and regulation take the center stage. So that are the two approaches of the two approaches of human development and the characteristics of lifespan. So that would be our first topic. And now let's proceed to the second topic, which is the stages of development and developmental task. So for every development stage, there is an expected developmental task. So according to Santrock, there are 8 developmental tasks. So the first one is the prenatal period from conception to birth. It involves tremendous growth from single cell to an organism complete with brain and behavioral capabilities. So the second one is the infancy from birth to 2 years. It is a time of extreme dependence on adults. Many psychological activities are just beginning. Language, symbolic thought, sensory motor, coordination, and social learning. So the third one is the early childhood. So it is the end of infancy to 5 to 6 years or in grade 1. So these are the preschool years. Young children learn to become more self-sufficient and to care for themselves, develop school readiness and skills, and spend many hours in play with peers. So fourth is the middle and late childhood. So 6 to 11 years of age, the elementary school years. So the fundamental skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic are mastered during this period. So the child formally exposed to the larger world in its culture. Achievements become more central theme of the child's world and self-control increases. So fifth is the adolescence period. So 10 to 12 years of age ending up to 18 to 22 years of age. So during this stage or development begins with rapid physical changes, dramatic gains in height and weight, changes in body contour, and the development of sexual characteristics such as enlargement of the breast, development of pubic and facial hair, and deepening the voice. Pursuit of independence and identity are prominent. Thought is more logical, abstract, and idealistic. So most of this or during this stage is more time is spent outside of the family. So let us proceed now to the sixth period or stage. So the sixth is early adulthood, from late teens or early 20s lasting through the 30s. It is a time establishing personal and economic independence, career development, selecting a mate, learning to live with someone in an intimate way, starting a family, and rearing child. So next is the middle adulthood, 40 to 60 years of age. It is a time of expanding personal and social involvement in responsibility, of assisting the next generation in becoming competent and mature individuals, in reaching and maintaining satisfaction in a career. And the last one is the late adulthood. So 60 years and above. It is a time for adjustment to decreasing strength and health, life review, retirement, and adjustment to new social roles. So that would be our topic number 2, which is the stages of development and developmental task. So we are done with our topic 2. So let us proceed to the topic 3, the teachers as consumers and users, teachers as researchers, the scientific method, research design, data gathering, and technique. Teachers as consumers or end users of research. So research give teachers and also policymakers important knowledge to use in decision making for the benefit of learners and their families. Second is teachers are able to integrate the most authoritative research findings. It enables teachers to come up with informed decision on what to teach and how to teach. Third is it helps teachers to be more knowledgeable about how to fit our teaching development levels of the learner. So that are the teacher as consumers and users of research. So let us proceed to the 5 scientific method. So the first scientific method is identify and define the problems. Second is determine the hypothesis. Third is collect and analyze data. And fourth, formulate conclusions. And lastly, the apply conclusions to the original hypothesis. So that are the 5 scientific method. So let us proceed to the research design. So there are 8 research designs. So the first research design is the case study. So the case study is an in-depth look at an individual. So second is the correlational study. So it determines associations. Third is the experimental. So it determines cause and effect relationships. It also involves manipulating one variable to determine if changes in one variable cause changes in another variable. So in this method relies on controlled methods, random assignment, and the manipulation of variables to test a hypothesis. So the fourth is the naturalistic observation. So it focuses on children's experiences in natural setting. So this is not involve any intervention or manipulation on the part of the researcher. So these techniques involve observing subjects in their natural environment. So this type of research is often utilized in situations where conducting lab research is unrealistic, cost prohibitive, or would unduly affect the subject's behavior. So next research design is the longitudinal. This research design studies and follows through a single group over a period of time. The same individuals are studied over a period of time, so usually several years or more. So next is the cross-sectional. A research strategy in which individuals or different ages are compared at one time. So that would be the cross-sectional, and let's proceed to the 7th research design, which is the sequential. So this is the combined cross-sectional and longitudinal approaches to learn about lifespan development. So this starts with cross-sectional study that includes individuals of different ages. A number of years after the initial assessment, the same individuals are tested. This is the longitudinal aspect of the design. So the last one is the action research design. So action research is a reflective process of progressive problem solving led by individuals working with others in teams or as part of a community of practice to improve the way they address issues and solve problems. In the context of teaching, action researches of teachers stem from their own questions about and reflections on their everyday classroom practice. So that are the 8 research designs. So let us proceed to the data gathering techniques. So in data gathering, so we have 5 techniques. So the first one is observation. Observations can be made in either laboratories or natural settings. So that is the observation. Second is the physiological measures. Certain indicators of children's development such as, among others, heart rate, hormone levels, bone growth, body weight, and brain activity are measured. So the third technique is standardized. So these are prepared tests that assess individuals' performance in different domains. These tests are administered in a consistent manner. So fourth is the interviews and questionnaires, involving asking the participants to provide information about themselves based on the interview questionnaire given by the researcher. Gathering of data may be conducted through a printed questionnaire over the telephone, by email, in person, or online. Information is obtained by utilizing standardized procedures so that every participant is asked the same questions in the same manner. It entails asking participants for information in some structured format. So the last technique is the life history records. So these are records of information about a lifetime chronology of events in activities. They often involve combination of data, records on education, work, family, and residence. So these include public records or historical documents or interviews with respondents. So that are the 5 data gathering techniques. So now let us proceed to the ethical principles. So researchers are bound by ethical guidelines in order to support the true goals of research. There are ethical standards that govern the conduct of research, just as there are ethical standards that govern the behavior of teachers. These ethical guidelines serve as reminders that as researchers, we must work to protect our studies participants and maintain the research integrity. So that would be the ethical principles, and that would be the third topic, which is the teachers as consumers and users of research, teacher as researchers, the scientific method, research design, data gathering technique. So let's now proceed to the fourth topic. So our next topic, or our topic number 4, is about the Sigmund Freud's psychosexual theory. So Freud believed that personality developed through a series of childhood stages in which the pleasure-seeking energies of ID become focused on certain erogenous areas. An erogenous zone is characterized as an area of the body that is particularly sensitive to stimulation. So during the 5 stages, the erogenous zone associated with each stage serves as a source of pleasure. So the Sigmund Freud's psychosexual theory has 3 components in personality adjustment. So the first one is the ID. Exists from birth and is most prominent in the newborn baby. So ID is the subconscious part. Second is the ego, the rational conscious part. It begins to emerge later in infancy and helps the child relate to realities of the environment and the constraints imposed by others without losing a healthy concept of self. The third is the superego, can be thought of as something like the conscience. Ideally, it acts as a guide behavior. It is associated with morality. It is the ego's job to mediate between the demand of the ID, which can be ruthless if allowed free rein, and those of the superego, which can be overly harsh and restraining. So, let us proceed to the psychosexual stages of development. So, we have 5 psychosexual stages of development. So the first one is the oral stage, from 0 to 1 year old. In the first stage of personality development, the libido is centered in a baby's mouth. It gets much satisfaction from putting all sorts of things in its mouth to satisfy the libido, and thus its ID demands. So which as this stage in life are oral or mouth-oriented, such as sucking, biting, and breastfeeding. So the second one is the anal stage, from 1 to 3 years. The libido now becomes focused on the anus, and the child derives great pleasure from defecating. The child is now fully aware that they are a person in their own right, and that their wishes can bring them into conflict with the demands of the outside world. So that is the anal stage. And now let's proceed to the phallic stage, from 3 to 5 or 6 years old. Excuse me. Sensitivity now becomes concentrated in the genitals, and masturbation in both sexes becomes a new source of pleasure. The child becomes aware of anatomical sex differences, which sets in motion in conflict between erotic attraction, resentment, rivalry, jealousy, and fear, which Freud called the Oedipus complex in boys and the Electra complex in girls. So, let us proceed to the 4th psychosexual stages of development, the latency stage, from 5 or 6 to puberty. No further psychosexual development takes place during this stage. The libido is dormant. Freud thought that most sexual impulses are repressed during the latent stage, and sexual energy can be sublimated towards schoolwork, hobbies, and friendships. So, next is the genital stage, from puberty to adult. This is the last stage of Freud's psychosexual theory of personality development and begins in puberty. It is a time of adolescent sexual experimentation, the successful resolution of which is settling down in a loving one-to-one relationship with another person in our 20s. Sexual instinct is directed to heterosexual pleasure rather than self-pleasure like during the phallic stage. For Freud, the proper outlet of the sexual instinct in adults was through heterosexual intercourse. Fixation and conflict may prevent this, with the consequence that sexual perversions may develop. So that are the 5 psychosexual stages of development. And that would be the topic. So that would be our topic. That would be the topic number 5, the Sigmund Freud's psychosexual theory. And now, the topic number 4. And now, let us proceed to the topic number 5. So, we are done with topic number 4. So, let us now proceed to the topic number 5 about the Piaget's stages of cognitive development. So, Piaget's theory of cognitive development suggests that children move through 4 different stages of mental development. His theory focuses not only on understanding how children acquire knowledge, but also on understanding the nature of intelligence. So, the Piaget's stages, or the Piaget's theory of development, has 3 basic cognitive concepts. The first one is the schema. So the schema refers to the cognitive structure by which individuals intellectually adapt into and organize their environment. It is an individual's way to understand or create meaning about a thing or experience. So second is the assimilation. This is the process of fitting a new experience into an existing or previously created cognitive structure or schema. So next is the accommodation. Accommodation is the process of creating a new schema. And the last one is the equilibration. Piaget believed that people have the natural need to understand how the world works and to find order, structure, and predictability in their life. So equilibration is achieving proper balance between assimilation and accommodation. This means that there is a discrepancy between what is perceived and what is understood. We then exert effort through assimilation and accommodation to establish equilibrium once more. So that are the basic cognitive concepts. So let us proceed to the stages of cognitive development. So we have 4 cognitive development. So the first one is the sensory motor stage. So the sensory motor the stage is the first stage, corresponds from birth to infancy. So this is the stage when a child who is initially reflexive in grasping, sucking, and reaching becomes more organized in his movement and activity. So in sensory motor, there is a object permanence. So object permanence is the ability of the child to know that an object still exists even when out of sight. So this ability is attained in the sensory motor stage. So the second is the pre-operational stage. So the pre-operational stage covers from about 2 to 7 years old, the roughly corresponding to the preschool years. Intelligence at this stage is intuitive in nature. At this stage, the child can now make mental representations and is able to pretend the child is now ever closer to the use of symbols. So this stage is highlighted by the following. So the first one is the symbolic function, the ability to represent objects in events. Second is the egocentrism, the tendency of a child to only see his point of view and to assume that everyone also has his same point of view. Third is decentration. This refers to the tendency of a child to only focus on one aspect of a thing or event and exclude other aspects. Next is the irreversibility. So pre-operational children still have the inability to reverse their thinking. So the next is the animism. So this is a tendency of children to attribute human-like traits, thinking, or characteristics to inanimate objects. So the last one is the transductive reasoning. So this refers to the pre-operational child's type of reasoning that is neither inductive nor deductive. Reasoning appears to be form particular to particular. So that are the following that would be the pre-operational stage. And now let's proceed to the third stage, which is the concrete operational stage. So this stage is characterized by the ability of the child to think logically but only in terms of concrete objects. So this covers approximately the ages between 8 to 11 years or the elementary school years. So the concrete operational stage is marked by the following. So the first is decentering or decentering. So this refers to the ability of the child to perceive the different features of objects in situations. Second is reversibility. So during the stage of concrete operations, the child can now follow that certain operations can be done in reverse. Third is the conservation. This is the ability to know that certain properties of objects like number, mass, volume, or area do not change even if there is a change in appearance. So the last one is the seriation. This refers to the ability to order or arrange things in a series based on one dimension such as weight, volume, or size. So that is the concrete operational stage. And now let's proceed to the last stage, which is the formal operational stage. This is the final stage of formal operations covering ages between 12 to 15 years. Thinking become more logical. They can now solve abstract problems and can hypothesize. So this stage is characterized by the following. So the first one is the hypothetical reasoning. So this is the ability to come up with the different hypotheses about a problem and to gather and weigh data in order to make a final decision or judgment. So next is the analogical reasoning. This is the ability to perceive the relationship in one instance and then use that relationship to narrow down possible answers in another similar situation or problem. Lastly, the deductive reasoning. So this is the ability to think logically by applying a general rule to a particular instance or situation. So that would be the topic number 5 about the Piaget stages of cognitive development. And let us proceed to topic number 6, the Erik Erikson psychosocial theory of development. Erikson's theory postulates that people advance through the stages of development based on how they adjust to social crises throughout their lives. These social crises instruct how individuals react to the surrounding world. Erikson asserts in psychosocial theory that ego identity is reached by facing goals and challenges throughout the 8 stages of development over the entire cycle. So the psychosocial development has 8 stages. So the first stage is the trust versus mistrust. So from birth to 12 months, the infant forms a loving, trusting relationship with a caregiver, which in turn forms the foundation for the expectation of the world a secure and pleasant place to live. So second is the autonomy versus shame, 1 to 3 years old. Infants and toddlers begin to explore their world and assert their independence. Third is initiative versus guilt, from 3 to 6 years. So the preschooler needs to rely on active, purposeful behavior more and more as their environment presents new challenges and demands more responsibility. So the fourth is the industry versus inferiority, 6 to 12 years. The school-age child must learn to deal with demands to learn a wide range of new skills, including the task of formal schooling. So the next stage is the identity versus role confusion, from 12 to 18 years. So the primary task at this developmental stage is the formation of a sense of personal identity with regard to such things as opinions, sexual roles, and occupation. So the sixth stage is the intimacy versus isolation. At this stage, individuals face the task of forming intimate relationships with others. So the seventh stage is the generativity versus stagnation, or in the middle adulthood. So the focus of the stage is on parenting. By generativity, Erikson means helping the next generation to develop and lead useful lives. So the last stage is the integrity versus despair. So this is from late adulthood. If the individual has been successful in resolving the crisis associated with earlier stages, when he or she looks back on his or her life, it will be with a feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment. So that are the 8 stages of psychosocial development. So Erickson's work has been critiqued for its Eurocentric male orientation similar to Freud's and has been elaborated on other theories. Margaret Muller and others emphasize the importance of a symbiotic relationship between the infant and the mother as the foundation for the child's subsequent separation, individuation, or the process of becoming aware of one's own self. So that is our topic number 6, the Erickson's psychosocial theory of development. And now, let us now proceed to the topic number 7 about the Kohlberg's theory of moral development. So, theory of development. This theory builds on the work of Jean Piaget. Piaget believed that children are born without a moral consciousness. On the other hand, Kohlberg believed that moral development depended on moral reasoning, and it was learned in 3 levels, each having 2 stages. So, the moral development has 3 levels of development. The first one is the conventional or the pre-conventional reasoning. So the pre-conventional reasoning is the moral reasoning directed initially by the expectation of punishment from external sources and later by an interest in personal reward. So the pre-conventional has 2 stages. The first stage is the obedience in punishment, behavior driven by avoiding punishment. The second stage is the individual interest. So the behavior driven by self-interest and rewards. So the next level of development is the conventional reasoning, initially to get approval and later in response to law and a sense of duty. So it has 2 stages. The first stage is the interpersonal stage. So behavior driven by social approval. And the second stage or the stage 4 is the authority, behavior driven by obeying authority and conforming to social order. And the last level of development is the post-conventional. So the post-conventional is moral reasoning guided by community versus individual rights and later by universal principles of ethics. So this level has 2 stages. So the first stage is the social contract, which behavior driven by balance of social order in individual rights. And second stage is the universal ethics. So the behavior driven by internal moral principles. So that would be the 7th topic, the Kohlberg's theory of moral development. So since we're already done with our topic number 7, so let us proceed to the topic number 8, the Vygotsky's sociocultural theory. So Vygotsky sociocultural theory grew from the work of seminal psychologist Lev Vygotsky, who believed that parents, peers, caregivers, and the culture at large were responsible for developing high-order functions. So learning has its basis in interacting with other people. So the term scaffolding is Vygotsky term for the appropriate assistance given by a teacher to assist learner accomplish a task. So the Vygotsky's sociocultural theory has 4 factors. The first one is the social interaction. So Piaget's theory was more individual while Vygotsky was more social. So Vygotsky gave more weight on the social interactions contributed to the cognitive development of individuals. So for him, the social environment or the community takes on a major role in one's development. So then the second factor is the cultural factors. So Vygotsky believed in the crucial role that culture played on the cognitive development of children. So Vygotsky looked into the wide range of experiences that a culture would give to a child. For instance, one's culture view about education, how children are trained early in life, all can contribute to the cognitive development of the child. So the next factor is the language. Language is opening the door for learners to acquire knowledge that others already have. Learners can use language to know and understand the world, solve problems. So language serves as a social function, but it also has important individual function. So Vygotsky believed in essential roles activities that when listening passively. Learning by doing is even made more fruitful when children interact with knowledgeable adult peers. So the next factor is the zone proximal development. So the zone represents a learning opportunity where a knowledgeable adult assisting the child's development. The support or assistance that lets the child accomplish a task he cannot accomplish independently is called scaffolding. So that are the four factors of the socio-cultural theory of Vygotsky. So we have the social interaction, cultural factors, language, and zone of proximal development. So let us proceed to the topic number 9, the Bronfenier's ecological theory. So Bronfenier's ecological theory describes multi-part layers of environment that has an effect on the development of the child. Environment of the child affecting of child's development. But we're not just looking the environment where yes the child has day-to-day interaction. So these are the Bronfenier's bioecological model structure of environment. So there are 4 structure of environment. So the first one is the microsystem. Microsystem is the system closest to the person and the one in which he has direct contact. Family, school, and neighborhood. This structure covers the child's immediate environment. Second is the mesosystem. So this layer serves as the connection between the structures of the child's microsystem. And the third one is the exosystem. This layer refers to the bigger social system in which the child does not function directly. This includes the city government, the workplace, and the mass media. And the fourth one is the macro system. This layer is found in the outermost part in the child's environment. The macro system includes the cultural values, customs, and laws. So that are the 4 structure of environment by the Bronfenier's bioecological model. So we are done with the topic 9, which is the Bronfenier's ecological theory. And now let's proceed to the topic number 10 about the prenatal period. So the prenatal period has 3 stages. So the first stage is the germinal period from conception to 2 weeks. Prenatal development that takes place in the first 2 weeks after conception. It includes the creation of the zygote, continued cell division, and the attachment of the zygote to the uterine wall. So the second period or the second stage is the embryonic period. 2 weeks to 2 months. Prenatal development occurs 2 weeks, so the zygote will become embryo. So the organogenesis is the process of organ formation during the first 2 months of prenatal. So in embryonic period, there are 3 layers of the cells. So the first layer is the endoderm. It is the inner layer of the cell, and it becomes the digestive and respiratory system. Second is the ectoderm cell, the second part is the ectoderm. It is the outermost layer of the cell. It becomes the nervous sensory receptors in skin parts. Third is the mesoderm. It is the middle layer. So it develops into circulatory, skeletal, muscular, excretory, and reproductive system. So that are the 3 layers of the cells. So we have also the 3 life support system. So what are they? So the first one is the placenta, a life support system that consists of disc-shaped group of tissue in which small blood vessels from the mother and the offspring intertwine but do not join. Second is the umbilical cord. Contains 2 arteries and 1 vein that connects the baby to the placenta. The third one is the amnion. It is a bag or an envelope that contains a clear fluid in which the developing embryo float. So that are the 3 life support system of the embryonic period. So ano ba naman ito? So now let's proceed to the last stages of prenatal period, the fetal period. So last from about 2 months after conception until 9 months when the infant is born. So dramatic course and organ system mature to the point at which life can be sustained outside the womb. So that is the 3rd stages of prenatal period. So we are already done with the topic 10. So let us proceed to the topic 11, which is the physical development of infants and toddler. So as you learned in the stages of human development, there are 2 patterns. So the cephalocaudal and the proximodestal patterns. So the first pattern is the cephalocaudal trend. It is the postnatal growth from conception to 5 months when the head grows more than the body. So second is the proximodestal trend. It is the prenatal growth from 5 months to birth when the fetus grows from the inside of the body outwards. So the height and weight. It is normal for newborn babies to drop 5 to 10% of their body weight within a couple of weeks of birth. That is due to the baby's adjustment to neonatal feeding. Once they adjust to sucking, swallowing, and digesting, they grow rapidly. So next is the brain development. Among the most dramatic changes in the brain in the first 2 years of life are the spreading connections of dendrites to each other. The 5th one is the motor development. Along this aspect of motor development, infants and toddlers begin reflexives to gross motor skills and fine motor skills. So the 6th one is the reflexes. So the newborn has some basic reflexes which are, of course, automatic and serve as survival mechanisms before they have the opportunity to learn. Many reflexes which are present at birth will generally subside within a few months as the baby grows and matures. So there are many different reflexes. So these are the sucking reflex, the rooting reflex, gripping reflex, curling reflex, startle moro reflex, gallant reflex, And last, the tonic reflex. So, the number 7 is the gross motor skills. So, it is always a source of excitement for parents to witness dramatic changes in the infant's first year of life. The dramatic motor development is shown in babies unable to even lift their heads, to being able to grab things off the cabinet, to chase the ball, and to walk away from parent. And lastly, the motor or the fine motor skills. Fine motor skills are skills that involve a refined use of the small muscles controlling the hand, fingers, and thumb. The development of these skills allows one to be able to exhibit, able to complete tasks such as writing, drawing, and botaning. So the ability to exhibit motor skills involve activities that involve precise eye-hand coordination. The development of reaching and grasping becomes more refined during the first 2 years of life. Initially, infants show only crude shoulder and elbow movements, but later they show wrist movements, hand rotation, and coordination. So that would be the topic number 11, which is the physical development of infants and toddler. So now let us proceed to topic number 12, the cognitive development of infant and toddlers. Babies are not only growing physically during the first 2 years of life, but also cognitively. So the cognitive development of infant and toddlers has 4 development. So the first one is the sensory motor development. So the sensory motor development is as children go through a period of dramatic growth and learning as kids interact with their environment. They are continually making new discoveries about how the world works. The cognitive development that occurs during this period takes place over a relatively short period of time and involves a great deal of growth. So second is the object permanence. It is used to describe a child's ability to know that objects continue to exist even though they can no longer be seen or heard. Third is the language development. So here are just a few of the important things your children might achieve in language development between 3 months and 8 years. So during 3 to 12 months, the baby will most likely coo and laugh, play with sounds, and begin to communicate with gestures like waving. So at 12 to 18 months, children often say their first words with meaning. And during 18 months to 12 or 2 years, their vocabulary has grown and they'll start to put 2 words together into short sentences. So your child will understand much of what you say, and you can understand what your child says to you. So that is the language development. And now, the learning and remembering. Pavlov's classical condition and Skinner operant conditioning have been proven to apply infants. All of us experience infantile amnesia, the inability to recall events that happened when we were very young. In psychosexual theorist Sigmund Freud, he called it childhood amnesia. Not all things that we can recall, but those memories will be shown to our unconscious and subconscious mind. So that would be the learning and remembering. So the children or the infant and toddlers could also learn and remember. So that would be the topic number 12, the cognitive development of infant and toddlers. And now let's proceed to the 13th topic, which is the socio-emotional development of toddlers and infants. the formative years. It is said the importance of the first 3 years in human development. They are so-called the formative years, whereas the parents, caregivers have a different significant role in the development of the child. So, the socio-emotional development of children has two elements. The first element is attachment. So, the attachment. So, for healthy socio-emotional development, the infant needs to establish an enduring emotional bond characterized by a tendency to seek and maintain closeness to a specific figure, particularly during stressful situations. This is the social phenomenon of attachment. The second one is the temperance. Another factor related to the infant's socio-emotional development is temperament. Temperament is a word that captures the ways that people differ, even birth, in such things as their emotional reactions, activity level, attention span, persistence, inability to regulate their emotions. Every baby expresses personality traits we call temperament. So how a child responds emotionally to object, events, and people is reflection of his individual temperaments. So that are the two elements of socio-emotional development of children. So now let us proceed to the supporting social-emotional development for the infants and toddlers. So each infant and toddler develops at his or her own rate. Socio-emotional development is dependent upon ongoing responsive relationship. So according to Alexander Thomas and Stella Chess, so the temperament has traits. So the first is the activity level. Activity level is the amount of movement and body activity. Second is the regulatory or rhythmicity. This is regularity of basic functions such as eating and sleeping. Third is approach and withdrawal. How an individual responds to a new situation, person, place, or thing. Fourth is adaptability. How quickly or slowly an individual adapts to change. And the fifth one is sensitivity. How sensitive an individual is to outside stimulation from touch, sounds, taste, etc. And the sixth one is the intensity, the energy level of the individual when expressing moods. 7 is the mode. It is the amount of pleasant and cheerful behavior constructed to fussy, crying, or negative behavior. And last, the eighth is the distractibility. This is how easily an individual can lose focus on an activity because of outside stimuli. And last is the persistence. It is how long an individual will keep at an activity without giving up. So that are the traits related to temperament according to Alexander Thomas and Stella Chess. So we are done with topic number 13. So now let's proceed to the topic number 14, which is the preschooler's physical development. So at this stage, preschoolers achieve many development milestones such as pre-service teachers who might be interested to teach and care for preschoolers need to be knowledgeable about them and to be truly an intentional and effective teacher. So there are 6 big ideas about the physical development of preschoolers. So the first one is physical changes in physical growth. Second is express themselves artistically. The third is physical development is marked by acquisition of gross and fine motor skills. Fourth is the proper nutrition and enough sleep are very important. Fifth is teachers and caregivers do a lot in maximizing the growth and development of preschoolers. And sixth is special preschoolers in inclusive classroom contribute well. So, that would be our topic number 14, the preschoolers' physical development. And we are done with our topic number 14. Let us now proceed to the last topic of the subject PED1 or the child adolescent learner and learn, which is the topic number 15, the cognitive development of the preschoolers. So the cognitive development refers to reasoning, thinking, and understanding. It is important for knowledge growth. In preschool and kindergarten, children are learning questioning, spatial relationships, problem solving, imitation, memory, number sense, classification, and symbolic play. So, let us now proceed to the cognitive development skills learned during preschool. So, the first one is questioning. So, during this development or skills that is being developed by a preschooler, a child asks why to determine causes and ask questions to solve problems and clarify their understanding. Second is the spatial relationship, exploring the spatial and physical aspects of the environment. For example, when a child places a toy in a container, dumps it out and fills up the container again with the toy. Third is problem solving. When children experiment, investigate, and work together with other children to problem solve. For example, when children ask questions to understand what will happen next. Fourth is imitation. When children imitate the behaviors of around them. For example, when a child sticks their tongue out, imitated another child stick their tongue out. So, fifth is the memory. Beginning to differentiate between objects and people and learn their daily routines. For example, when a child puts away their toy bin back in the same place it was on the shelf before. Sixth is the number sense. A child's understanding of the concepts and number relationships. They begin to understand quantities, recognize relationships, and understand the other order of numbers. For example, singing along to 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed. Seventh is classification. A child's ability to categorize, sort, group, and connect objects. For example, sorting different colored pom-poms in the same colored boxes. Lastly is the symbolic play. During play, children use objects, ideas, and actions to stand for other things. For example, holding a toy phone up to their ear or rocking a baby back and forth. So that are the cognitive development skills learned during preschool. So, cognitive development encompasses a child's working memory, attention, as well as child's ability to manage, respond to the experiences, and information they experience on a daily basis. So, that would be all our topic for the last topic, which is the cognitive development of these preschoolers. And thank you for listening and watching, and I hope you've learned something. And to conclude, it is important to study the child adolescents learning and learned, as this help develop an understanding of the physical changes that occur in puberty, develop an understanding of the intellectual changes that occur in adolescence, develop an understanding of the emotional development that occurs during adolescence, develop an understanding of the social development that occurs in adolescence and child. And I hope that all of us would gain knowledge about this topic. That would be all. Thank you very much. Once again, I am Evangelio Arlon, BS Ed Science first year. Thank you very much and have a good day.